All right, guys, so we're going to read Plato's Apology, or the Apology by Plato, translated by Benjamin Jowett. So Socrates' defense. I don't know if I need to give you guys context, but Socrates, you're going to learn about him right here in the Apology by Plato. So here we go. This is Socrates' defense. How you have felt, O men of Athens, at hearing the speeches of my accusers, I cannot tell. But I know that their persuasive words almost made me forget who I was. Such was the effect of them, and yet they have hardly spoken a word of truth. But many as their falsehoods were, there was one of them which quite amazed me. I mean, when they told you to be upon your guard and not to let yourselves be deceived by the force of my eloquence. They ought to have been ashamed of saying this, because they were sure to be detected as soon as I opened my lips and displayed my deficiency. They certainly did appear to be most shameless in saying this, unless by the force of eloquence they mean the force of truth, for then I do indeed admit that I am eloquent. But in how different a way from theirs. While as I was saying, they have hardly uttered a word, or not more than a word of truth, but you shall hear from me the whole truth. Not, however, delivered after their manner in a set oration, duly ornamented with words and phrases. No, indeed, but I shall use the words and arguments which occur to me at the moment, for I am certain that this is right, and that at my time of life I ought not to be appearing before you, O men of Athens, in the character of a juvenile orator. Let no one expect this of me, and I must beg of you to grant me one favor, which is this: if you hear me using the same words in my defense which I have been in the habit of using, and in which most of you may have heard in the agora, and at the tables of the money changers or anywhere else, I would ask you not to be surprised at this, and not to interrupt me. For I am more than 70 years of age, and this is the first time that I have ever appeared in a court of law, and I am quite a stranger to the ways of the place, and therefore I would have you regard me as if I were really a stranger, whom you would excuse if you spoke in this native tongue. And after the fashion of his country, that I think is not an unfair request, never mind the manner, which may or may not be good, but think only of the justice of my cause, and give heed to that. Let the judge decide justly, and the speaker speak truly. And first I have to reply to the older charges and to my first accusers, and then I will go to the later ones. For I have had many accusers who accuse me of old, and their false charges have continued during many years. And I am more afraid of them than of Antus and his associates, who are dangerous too in their own way. But far more dangerous are these who began when you were children, and took possession of your minds with their falsehoods, telling of one Socrates, a wise man, who speculated about the heaven above and searched into the earth beneath, and made the worse appear the better cause. These are the accusers whom I dread. A wise man who speculated about the heaven and above. So I think he's saying that this is what they were saying about him. A wise man who speculated about the heaven above and searched into the earth beneath, and made the worse appear the better cause. These are the accusers whom I dread, for they are circulators of this rumor, and their hearers are too apt to fancy that speculators of this sort do not believe in the gods, and they are many, and their charges against me are of ancient date. And they made them in days when you were impressible, in childhood or perhaps in youth, and the cause, when heard, went by default, for there was none to answer. And hardest of all, their names I do not know and cannot tell, unless in the chance of a comic poet. But the main body of these slanderers, who from envy and malice have wrought upon you, and there are some of them who are convinced themselves and impart their convictions to others. All these, I say, are most difficult to deal with, for I cannot have them up here and examine them, and therefore I must simply fight with shadows in my own defense, and examine when there was no one who answers. I will ask you then to assume with me, as I was saying, that my opponents are of two kinds, one recent, the other ancient, and I hope that you will see the propriety of my answering the latter first, for these accusations you heard long before the others, and much oftener. So it's interesting that Socrates is actually, he mentions the fact that he'll never be able to have them up here to go to battle and go to battle and debate, go to battle in his own defense with oration. Well then, I will make my defense, and I will endeavor in the short time which is allowed to do away with this evil opinion of me which you have held for such a long time. And I hope I may succeed, if this be well for you and me, and that my words may find favor with you. But I know that to accomplish this is not easy. I quite see the nature of the task. Let the event be as God wills. In obedience to the law, I make my defense. So he mentions God, but his accusers consider him a naturalist, someone who speculates on the things above and the things on earth. So what does he talk about there? At first I would probably throw charges accused and I'll go later, for I have any accuser accuse me of old or false charges continue, who are fairer than mantis, who are dangerous and nowhere. Yeah, a wise man who speculated about the heaven above and searched into the earth beneath, and made the worse appear the better. That's what you call a sophist. A sophisticated person, someone who tries to make the worse seem the better, like a lawyer. And they called him a naturalist, meaning he didn't believe in God. Naturalists or atheists speculate about the heavens and the earth beneath. So, well then, I will make my defense, and I will endeavor in the short time which is allowed to do away with this evil opinion of me which you have held for such a long time, and I hope I may succeed, if this be well for you and me, that my words may find favor with you. But I know that to accomplish this is not easy. I quite see the nature of the task. Let the event be as God wills. In obedience to the law, I'll make my defense. So he mentions God, so he already wipes out one of their accusations, which is that he's like a naturalist. He doesn't believe in their divinities. I will begin at the beginning and ask what the accusation is which has given rise to the slander of me, and which has encouraged Meletus to proceed against me. What do the slanderers say? They shall be my prosecutors, and I will sum up their words in an affidavit. Socrates is an evildoer and a curious person, who searches into things under the earth and in heaven, and he makes the worse appear the better cause, and he teaches the aforesaid doctrines to others. So he's an evildoer. It's another accusation. And a curious person. That is the nature of the accusation. An evildoer and a curious person who searches into things under the earth and in heaven, and he makes the worse appear the better cause, and he teaches the aforesaid doctrines to others. That is the nature of the accusation, and that is what you have seen yourselves in the comedy of Aristophanes, who has introduced a man whom he calls Socrates, going about and saying that he can walk in the air, and talking a deal of nonsense concerning matters of which I do not pretend to know either much or little, not that I mean to say anything disparaging of anyone who was a student of natural philosophy. So he's kind of poking fun at this guy who made a comedy of him, Aristophanes, who has introduced a man whom he calls Socrates about walking in the air. But he says, and talking a deal of nonsense concerning matters of which I do not pretend to know either much or little, not that I mean to say anything disparaging of anyone who is a student of natural philosophy. I should be very sorry if Meletus could lay that to my charge. But the simple truth is, O Athenians, that I have nothing to do with these studies. Very many of those here present are witnesses to the truth of this, and to them I appeal. So the guy made a comedy about, Socrates being like this, like a deity himself. Kind of like reminds me of the Jesus, like, Jesus actually was saying he walked on water, and people actually seen him walking on water, which the Bible writes, right? Which made people upset. So I think this comedy probably made some of these accusers or the enemies of Socrates pretty upset about this guy who could walk on water, etc. So speak then, you who have heard me, and tell your neighbors whether any of you have ever known me. Hold forth in few words or in many upon matters of this sort. Speak then, you who have heard me, and tell your neighbors whether any of you have ever known me. Hold forth in few words or many upon matters of this sort. So, but the simple truth is, O Athenians, that I have nothing to do with these studies. Very many of those here present are witnesses to the truth of this, and to them I appeal. Speak then, you who have heard me, and tell your neighbors whether any of you have ever known me. Hold forth in few words or in many words upon matters of this sort. You hear their answer, and from what they say of this, you will be able to judge the truth of the rest. So he's saying, like, accuse me. Those of you who have, believe that I'm this fucking, I've assumed powers of the gods. As little foundation is there for the report that I am a teacher and take money. That is no more true than the other. Although if a man is able to teach, I honor him for being paid. There is Gorgias of Leontinum, or Leontium, and Prodicus of Ceos, and Hippias of Elis, who go the round of the cities and are able to persuade the young men to leave their own citizens by whom they might be taught for nothing, and come to them who they not only pay but are thankful if they may be allowed to pay them. And it kind of shows ignorance right here in Socrates, because instead of he's not thinking him a god, because right here he brings up these other men just like him, but who teach philosophy but get paid for their teachings, who have seem to have more of an influence on the youth. You know, it mentions the young men of the city. So that kind of shows a little ignorance in Socrates. There was actually a Parian or a Parian philosopher residing in Athens, of whom I have heard, and I came to hear of him in this way. I met a man who has spent a world of money on the sophists, Callias the son of Hipponicus, and knowing that he had sons, I asked him, Callias, I said, if your two sons were foals or calves, there would be no difficulty in finding someone to put over them. We should hire a trainer of horses or a farmer, probably, who would improve and perfect them in their own proper virtue and excellence. But as they are human beings, whom are you thinking of placing over them? Is there anyone who understands human and political virtue? You must have thought about this as you have sons. Is there anyone? There is, he said. Who is he? Said I. And of what country, and what does he charge? Avienus the Parian, he replied. He is the man, and his charge is 5 minae. Happy is Avienus, I said to myself, if he really has this wisdom and teaches at such a modest charge. Had I the same, I should have been very proud and conceited, but the truth is that I have no knowledge of the kind. So he's telling him, your sons are fucking stupid. They could be controlled by anybody. So he's kind of like poking fun at the developing establishment. So there was Parian philosopher. I met a man who has spent a world of money on the sophists. So the sophists are the ones who make the worst cause seem the better, like lawyers, right? Callias, the son of Hipponicus, and knowing that he had sons, I asked him, Callias, I said, if your two sons were cows or fucking baby cows, there would be no difficulty in finding someone to put over them. We should hire a trainer of horses or a farmer, probably, who would improve and perfect them in their own proper virtue and excellence. So we should hire what do you say? A horse? We should hire a trainer of horses. Like, we're not trying to have your sons be fucking cows, you know? I feel like that's why he meant that. Or a farmer would probably improve and perfect them in their own proper virtue and excellence. Whom are you thinking of placing over them? So he says, and then so he says, he is the man, and he charges 5 minae, Avienus the Parian. Happy is Avienus, I said to myself, if he really has this wisdom and teaches at such a modest charge. I dare say, Athenians, that someone among you will reply, why is this Socrates, and what is the origin of these accusations of you? For there must have been something strange which you have been doing. All this great fame and talk about you would never have arisen if you had been like other men. Tell us, then, why this is, as we should be sorry to judge hastily of you. So, give us your defense. Now, I regard this as a fair challenge, and I will endeavor to explain to you the origin of this name of wise and of this evil fame. Please do attend, then. And although some of you may think I am joking, I declare that I will tell you the entire truth. Men of Athens, this reputation of mine has come of a certain sort of wisdom which I possess. If you ask me what kind of wisdom, I reply, such wisdom as is attainable by man, for to that extent I am inclined to believe that I am wise, whereas the persons of whom I was speaking have a superhuman wisdom, which I may fail to describe, because I have it not myself, and he who says that I have speaks falsely and is taking away my character. And here, O men of Athens, I must beg you not to interrupt me, even if I seem to say something extravagant, for the word which I will speak is not mine. I will refer to a witness who is worthy of credit, and will tell you about my wisdom, whether I have any, and of what sort, and that witness shall be the god of Delphi. You must have known Chaerephon. He was early a friend of mine, and also a friend of yours, for he shared in the exile of the people and returned with you. While Chaerephon, as you know, was very impetuous in all his doings, and he went to Delphi and boldly asked the oracle to tell him whether, as I was saying, I must beg you not to interrupt, he asked the oracle to tell him whether there was anyone wiser than I was, and the Pythian prophetess answered that there was no man wiser. Chaerephon is dead himself, but his brother, who was in court, will confirm the truth of this story. So he says, as I was saying, I must beg you not to interrupt. He asked the oracle to tell him whether there was anyone wiser than I was. So Socrates' friend Chaerephon went to the oracle of Delphi and boldly asked the oracle to tell him whether there was anybody more wiser than I am. So he's talking about Socrates. And he asked the oracle to tell him, and the Pythian prophetess, which is Delphi the oracle, answered that there was no man wiser. So oracle is like a conduit who gets messages from the gods. So Sharifan is dead, but he said his brother will testify to confirm the truth of the story that Sharifan told while he was alive. I do not mention this, or why do I mention this? Because I'm going to explain to you why I have such an evil name. When I heard the answer, I said to myself, what can the God mean, and what is the interpretation of this riddle? For I know that I have no wisdom, small or great. What can he mean when he says that I am the wisest of men, and yet he is a God and cannot lie? That would be against his nature. After a long consideration, I at last thought of a method of trying the question. I reflected that if I could only find a man wiser than myself, then I might go to the God with the refutation in my hand. I should say to him, here is a man who is wiser than I am, but you said that I was the wisest? Accordingly, I went to one who had the reputation of wisdom, and observed to him. His name I need not mention. He was a politician whom I selected for examination. So Socrates is going to test. He's trying to refute. He's trying to rebuttal. He's trying to prove the oracle wrong. So here was a man who was wiser than I am, is he saying. When he finds that man, he's going to go back to the oracle of Delphi and say this. Here was a man who was wiser than I am, but you said that I was the wisest. End quote. Accordingly, I went to one who had the reputation of wisdom and observed to him. His name I need not mention. He was a politician whom I selected for examination, and the result was as follows. When I began to talk with him, I could not help thinking that he was not really wise, although he was thought wise by many, and wiser still by himself, and I went and tried to explain to him that he thought himself wise, but was not really wise, and the consequence was that he hated me, and his enmity was shared by several who were present and heard me. So I left him, saying to myself as I went away, well, although I do not suppose that either of us knows anything really beautiful and good, I am better off than he is, for he knows nothing and thinks that he knows. I neither know nor think that I know. In this latter particular, then, I seem to have slightly the advantage of him. Then I went to another who had still higher philosophical pretensions, and my conclusion was exactly the same. I made another enemy of him and of many others besides him. Well, although I do not suppose that either of us knows anything really beautiful and good, I am better off than he is, for he knows nothing and thinks that he knows. I neither know nor think that I know. That's the key point right there. After this, I went to one man after another, being not unconscious of the enmity which I provoked, and I lamented and feared this, but necessity was laid upon me. The word of God, I thought, ought to be considered first. And I said to myself, go I must to all who appear to know, and find out the meaning of the oracle. And I swear to you, Athenians, by the dog I swear, for I must tell you the truth, the result of my mission was just this. I found that the men most in repute, with the most reputation, were all but the most foolish, and that some inferior men were really wiser and better. I will tell you the tale of my wanderings, and of the Herculean labors, as I may call them, which I endured only to find at last the oracle irrefutable. Like he was not wrong. When I left the politicians, I went to the poets, whether the tragic poets, the dithyrambic poets, and all of sorts. And there I said to myself, you will be detected. Now you will find out that you are more ignorant than they are, he told himself. Accordingly, I took them some of the most elaborate passages in their own writings, and asked what was the meaning of them, thinking that they would teach me something. Will you believe me? He's talking to the crowd, the accusers, the people who's making his defense. Will you believe me? I am almost ashamed to speak of this, but still I must say that there was hardly a person present who would not have talked better about their poetry than they did themselves. That showed me in an instant that not by wisdom do poets write poetry, but by a sort of genius and inspiration. They are like diviners or soothsayers, who also say many fine things, but do not understand the meaning of them. And the poets appeared to me to be much in the same case, and I further observed that upon the strength of their poetry they believed themselves to be the wisest of men in other things in which they were not wise. So I departed, conceiving myself to be superior to them for the same reason that I was superior to the politicians, because they believed they knew when he knew he didn't know. At last I went to the artisans, for I was conscious that I knew nothing at all, as I may say, and I was sure that they knew many fine things. And in this I was not mistaken, for they did know many things of which I was ignorant, and in this they certainly were wiser than I was. But I observed that even the good artisans fell into the same error as the poets, because they were good workmen. They thought that they also knew all sorts of high matters, and this defect in them overshadowed their wisdom. Therefore I asked myself on behalf of the oracle, whether I would like to be as I was, neither having their knowledge nor their ignorance. But I observed that even the good artisans fell into the same error as the poets, because they were good workmen, whether it was poetry or artisan. They thought that they also knew sorts of high matters, and this defect in them overshadowed their wisdom. Therefore I asked myself on behalf of the oracle, whether I would like to be as I was, neither having their knowledge nor their ignorance, or like them in both. And I made answer to myself in the oracle that I was better off as I was. The investigation has led to my having many enemies of the worst and most dangerous kind, and has given occasion also to many calumnies. And I am called wise, for my hearers always imagine that I myself possess the wisdom which I find wanting in others. But the truth is, O men of Athens, that God only is wise. And in this oracle he means to say that the wisdom of men is little or nothing. He is not speaking of Socrates. He's only using my name as an illustration, as if he said, he, O man, is the wisest, who, like Socrates, knows that his wisdom is in truth worth nothing. O man is the wisest. So God is the wisest. He, O man, is the wisest, who, like Socrates, knows that his wisdom is in truth worth nothing. And so I go my way obedient to the God, and make inquisition into the wisdom of anyone, whether citizen or stranger, who appears to be wise. And if he is not wise, then in vindication of the oracle I show him that he is not wise. And this occupation quite absorbs me, and I have no time to give either to any public matter of interest or to any concern of my own, but I am utter poverty by reason of my devotion to God. So the accusation that he is a naturalist, a sophist, you can say a lawyer or an atheist, a corrupter of the youth, he's making a statement that he believes in God, saying all he does all day is have conversations with these people of high power and people with, high regard in society. What do they call it? With the high reputation, and tries to, who the society considers to be wise and in control. So I have said enough in my defense. Oh, let me see. Never mind. I'm skipping it. Give me a sec. There was another thing. Young men of the richer classes, who have not much to do, come about me of their own accord. They like to hear the pretenders examined, and they often imitate me and examine others themselves. There are plenty of persons, as they soon enough discover, who think that they know something, but really know little or nothing. And then those who are examined by them, instead of being angry with themselves, are angry with me. This confounded Socrates, they say, this villainous misleader of youth. And then if somebody asks them why, what evil does he practice or teach, they do not know and cannot tell. But in order that they may not appear to be at a loss, they repeat the ready-made charges which are used against all philosophers about teaching things up in the clouds and under the earth, and having no gods, and making the worse appear the better cause. For they do not like to confess that their pretense of knowledge has been detected, which is the truth. And as they are numerous and ambitious and energetic, and are all in battle array, and have persuasive tongues, they have filled your ears with their loud and inveterate calumnies. And this is the reason why my three accusers, Meletus and Antus and Lycon, have set upon me. Meletus, who has a quarrel with me on behalf of the poets, Antus on behalf of the craftsmen, Lycon on behalf of the rhetoricians. And as I said at the beginning, I cannot expect to get rid of this mass of calumny all in a dissembled nothing. And yet I know that this plainness of speech makes them hate me. And what is their hatred but a proof that I am speaking the truth? This is the occasion and reason of their slander of me, as you will find out either in this or in any future inquiry. So the paragraph starts off that he brings to the floor, he brings to life this accusation of, a corrupter of the youth, because young men of the richer classes, who have not much to do, come about me on their own accord. They like to hear the pretenders examine. I don't know if he used that word. I don't know if the word he used in Greek says pretenders, but that sounds a little brash. He's like, it doesn't really seem like him. I don't know this translation. Just take it as a word. They like to hear the pretenders examine, and they often imitate me, saying these young kids are watching what I do and they imitate me. And then they go around and try to figure out for themselves if these people who they hold, or they're told to hold in high regard, with power and influence in society, they go about questioning them as well. And when the questioners find out, when their ignorance is exposed, or the lack of wisdom is exposed, they don't blame the young people. They're mad at Socrates. Well, you can't blame them in a sense, but you could blame them for how they control themselves, I have said enough in my defense against the first class of my accusers. I turn to the second class. So let's hold for a second. So his accusations are being an evildoer, someone who searches, things in the heavens and things beneath the earth. You could say consider him a naturalist, someone who doesn't believe in God. And right here, he's a corrupter of the youth. But he's saying he just goes around. There was a message through the conduit oracle of Delphi said to Sheriphon, which is Socrates' friend, he told him about this, the words from the gods given to him, that who's wiser than my friend Socrates? And Socrates said he's just doing God's work, and he's going around trying to find out if there's anyone more wiser than him. And he goes around realizing that nobody's really wise, but there's a lot of people who assume their wisdom. One of the important things is how people who are good, like with music, or good at certain crafts, believe that their wisdom is, which is kind of weird, believe that they actually, because they're good at that and they're known for that, that they have wisdom of virtue. I've said enough in my defense against the first class of my accusers. I turn to the second class, who are headed by Meletus, that good and patriotic man, as he calls himself. And now I will try to defend myself against them. These new accusers must also have their affidavit read. What do they say? Something of this sort, that Socrates is a doer of evil and corrupter of the youth, and he does not believe in the gods of the state, and has other new divinities of his own. That is a sort of charge. So Meletus, who has a quarrel with me on behalf of the poets. Damn, the poets are against going hard, because Meletus is one of the most known enemy in this apology, as you're going to find out. So Meletus, who's actually the representative of the poets, that good and patriotic man, as he calls himself. Now I will try to defend myself against him. These new accusers must also have their affidavit read, or defend myself against them. What do they say? Something of this sort, that Socrates is an evildoer, a corrupter of the youth, and he does not believe in the gods of the state, and has other new divinities of his own. That is a sort of charge. And now let us examine the particular counts. He says that I am an evildoer who corrupts the youth, but I say, O men of Athens, that Meletus is a doer of evil, and the evil is that he makes a joke of a serious matter, and is too ready at bringing other men to trial from a pretended zeal and interest about matters in which he really never had the smallest interest. And the truth of this I will endeavor to prove. So he says that I'm a doer of evil who corrupt the youth, but I say, O men of Athens, that Meletus is a doer of evil, and the evil is that he makes a joke of a serious matter, and is too ready at bringing other men to trial from a pretended zeal and interest about matters in which he really never had the smallest interest. And the truth of this I will endeavor to prove. Which in my opinion are the most dangerous people. You're just a poet. Have you even lived life? Have you ever put your name out there? No, you're a poet. Like you never put yourself in a position to question. And you're the most dangerous person, because you have put people to the guillotine. Come hither, Meletus, and let me ask a question of you. You think a great deal about the improvement of the youth? Meletus responds, yes, I do. Socrates says, tell the judges then, who is their improver? For you must know, as you have taken the pains to discover their corrupter, and are citing and accusing me before them, speak then and tell the judges who their improver is. Observe, Meletus, that you are silent and have nothing to say. But is not this rather disgraceful and a very considerable proof of what I was saying, that you have no interest in the matter? Speak up, friend, and tell us who their improver is. If I'm the corrupter, then who is their improver? So Meletus responds, the laws. But that, my good sir, is not my meaning. I want to know who the person is who in the first place knows the laws. The judges, Socrates, who are present in court. What do you mean to say, Meletus, that they are able to instruct and improve youth? Certainly they are. What, all of them, or some only and not others? All of them. By the goddess here, that is good news. There are plenty of improvers in. And what do you say of the audience? Do they improve them? Yes, they do. And the senators? Yes, the senators improve them, Meletus continues. But perhaps the members of the citizen assembly corrupt them, or do they improve them? They improve them. Then every Athenian approves and elevates them, all with the exception of myself, and I alone am their corrupter? Is that what you affirm? That is what I stoutly affirm, replies Meletus. I'm very unfortunate if that is true, but suppose I ask you a question. Would you say that this also holds true in the case of horses? Does one man do them harm and all the world good? Is not the exact opposite of this true? One man is able to do them good, or at least not many. The trainer of horses, that is to say, does them good, and others who have to do with them rather injure them. Is that not true, Meletus, of horses or any other animals? Yes, certainly. Whether you and Antis say yes or no, that is no matter. Happy indeed would be the condition of youth if they had one corrupter only, and all the rest of the world were their improvers. And you, Meletus, have sufficiently shown that you have never had a thought about the young. Your carelessness is seen in your not caring about matters spoken of in this very indictment. So that's where it comes to life. Happy indeed would be the condition of youth if they had one corrupter only, and all the rest of the world were their improvers. So he's talking about the state of Athens right now. Happy indeed would be the condition of the youth if they only had one corrupter. As you say, I am the one corrupter of the youth. And now, Meletus, I must ask you another question, which is better, to live among bad citizens or among good ones? Answer, friend, I say, for that is a question which may be easily answered. Do not the good do their neighbors good, and the bad do them evil? I'm going to split it up into another video.